This is Sunday, August the 27th, 2023, which is the last Sunday in the month of August in the year 2023. And on the last Sunday, Project Save the World always invites people from around the world to get together by Zoom and talk about our issues. Most of the people who come are activists in one way or another, or some of them are researchers doing work on the very issues that the activists are concerned about. So our meeting is already underway. I had a technical glitch that meant that I wasn't properly recording the first few minutes of it. But here we have Tariq Ralph in Austria, in Vienna, talking about the issues that he is in a position to follow very closely as somebody who knows a lot about nuclear matters, especially nuclear weapons. So let's hear from Tariq first, and then we'll go on and meet all my other friends.
On the island of Sicily is a small village up on a hill. It's all cobbled and it's very, very old buildings. And there is a foundation that was set up by Professor Ziccici about 60 years ago. And every year they do a big international seminar on planetary emergencies. And during the year, they provide training and education on physics and science and so on. So this year, I was invited for the first time, and I was invited to speak on nuclear weapons and global security. But there were very interesting presentations on COVID, on the oil market and energy transition, on critical infrastructure, vulnerabilities of water, cybersecurity challenges, small and modular nuclear reactors, pollution and the water crisis, environmental contaminants and children's health, particularly all the plastics that touch our food when we go to the supermarket to buy food that is already packaged in plastics that is already contaminating our food. And we are getting various chemicals from the plastics into our bodies, and there isn't really any global regulation. So that was quite frightening that for all these years we've been packaging foods in saran wrap and so on, and this has been transferring certain chemicals. And then there was also various other interesting sessions. So I really spoke about current situation regarding nuclear arms control, particularly the 3 weeks of non-proliferation treaty meetings that were held in Vienna from the 24th of July till the 11th of August. But they could not agree on anything. The 5 nuclear weapon states absolutely refused to agree to any deadlines or timelines or benchmarks for reducing nuclear weapons. They were all in a blame game. There was a lot of discussion on the safety of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine, also on negative security assurances. The current situation diplomatically on nuclear issues at the moment is deteriorating rather than improving after the failed NPT review conference that took place in New York a year ago, in August last year. So now the 5 nuclear weapon states in different ways are either modernizing or consolidating their nuclear weapon capabilities. There's only one arms control treaty left standing between Russia and the United States, and that is New START. The Russians suspended their implementation of this treaty earlier in the year, and US followed suit. So if this treaty collapses, then both sides can double the number of nuclear warheads on their existing delivery systems, that is their ballistic missiles and their bombers. They don't need to make any more missiles or any more bombers. They can just upload more warheads per bomber and per ballistic missile. So this is, again, a very dangerous tendency. Nuclear weapons cooperation between the United States and the United Kingdom continues unchecked, where there is exchange of design information on nuclear warheads that the United States Kingdom manufactures to put on the ballistic missiles on British submarines, which are the missiles are leased from the United States. When I raise this with Western countries, they all look at me as if I'm stark raving mad. And then the NATO countries that host nuclear weapons in Europe, at the NPT, they came up with a new line, and this is a direct quote, that NATO nuclear weapons have been integrated seamlessly into the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and therefore they are completely legitimate and there is no problem. One country hosting these nuclear weapons said that they would invite me to coffee and they would educate me on this situation, on the complete seamless integration of NATO nuclear weapons into the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So I'm waiting for that coffee invitation. And then also with regard to Australia's acquisition of either British or American submarines, nuclear-powered submarines, where there would be up to 2 metric tons or 2,000 kilograms of weapon-grade, highly enriched uranium completely outside of IAEA safeguards. This is also a new looming problem. And unfortunately, the Western countries, in Canada included, are turning a blind eye to this issue as well. Mm-hmm. So I think we need more activism in Canada to get the Canadian government and global affairs to be a little bit more responsible or be more active in promoting arms control and disarmament and also dealing with these existing challenges instead of dutifully lining up behind so-called alliance solidarity. So I'll stop there for now.
Oh boy. Well, I don't want to stop you, but I sure hate to hear you continue. It's too disappointing. Does anybody, okay, so Canada is not doing anything very progressive, but is there any hope for any NATO country to break the logjam? I mean, I have heard people say that Germany could, well, that was maybe, I don't know. Tell me, is there any country that one should start working on before Canada? That seems more promising that way.
Well, there is the so-called Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Initiative, in which Canada is a member along with Japan and some other NATO countries and also Mexico and so on. They had a number of proposals. It was sort of interesting that all of the non-nuclear weapon states, NATO countries included, all were calling for more nuclear disarmament from the 5 nuclear weapon states. All of them in different ways were insisting that the 5 nuclear weapon states need to report on their nuclear weapons activities and to develop a standardized reporting format on numbers of weapons dismantled, on station, on nuclear weapon doctrines, and so on. But again, there was no agreement among the 5 to do so, to report in ways different than what they are doing. The United States, of course, provides the most detailed reports, followed by Britain and France, whose reports are much less detailed. China really doesn't report at all. Russia reports, but it's also very minimalistic. So we really don't have, it's more civil society that provides the information on nuclear weapon holdings and estimates and so on. So there was an animated discussion on improving the access of civil society to NPT meetings. So fortunately, all of the NPT meetings during the second 2 weeks were live cast on UN Web TV, and you can go and find them, the recordings online still. So that was, I think, a good innovation where people sitting at home could also follow NPT meetings without necessarily having to travel now to New York, Geneva, or Vienna.
Would you put that in the chat box so that people can go there if they want to?
It's UN Web TV, and every day UN Web TV covers all kinds of UN meetings across various UN stations, including the Security Council. Yep.
Okay, and they keep these recordings how long, or
I think you just go by the calendar and select the month and the date, and then the menu drops down showing which meetings took place on that day, and one just scrolls down to the one that one is interested in and clicks on it.
Mhm.
and the recording starts. I don't know how far back they go, but they are still available on UN Web TV.
Okay, thank you. Let's, well, here comes Alexei Prokorenko from Warsaw. Now, we have a good bunch of people here. Let's put this on gallery so we can all get a good look at each other. I see Marilyn, I see Alan, I see Bill Lycum, I see Tariq. Paul Wirbos, you need to unmute yourself so we can say hello to you. Lita, you need to unmute
Hello.
yourself. And Alexei's already got his unmuted, and Erica's in the car, so your sound quality isn't the greatest anyway there, Erica, but unmute yourself so we can all say hello, hello. So, well, thank you so much, Tariq. I don't think you said a thing that makes me happy, but what else do I expect? What did make me interested is your report on this planetary emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now that is, that's the first time I've seen anybody put the consumption of plastic in the same category as an emergency. And I think it's been about 15 years since I started hearing about plastic being bad things for us to consume. But at that point, it was described as one particular kind of plastic, or at least one category of plastics. That I think it's the stuff that softens the plastic, at least at that point. And I was told that it was having an influence on male fertility, that the sperm counts of men, young men all around the world are decreasing. But that's been several years now. Is that a little bit of what you heard there, or is there a lot more to report on that issue?
Oh, that was a point that was made, and the presenter said that in the Western Hemisphere, in 50 years, all the men will not be able to conceive children anymore because of low sperm counts. And also the PET plastic bottles are also not safe, because PET, I don't remember what that stands for. A lot of the new plastic bottles in which people buy water and soft drinks are called PET. And according to the presenter, even the PET bottles are leaching certain chemicals into the contents of those bottles.
C as in cat.
No, P as in Peter, E as in Edward, and T as in Tom.
Okay. Well, now how are we going to know? I mean, I wouldn't know what
it usually says on the bottle label what type of plastic it is, where they have the recycling symbol on the plastic bottle, that it can be recycled. And some of them say that they are PET, meaning that they are safer than whatever were the other types of plastic containers.
Oh, they are safer. Oh, I thought they were.
No, they are not. No, they are not safer.
Oh, they're.
But they claim to be safer.
Oh, and
yeah.
they're not.
And,
okay.
And according to this presenter, they are not. And then also, one can buy straws that are made of cardboard, but inside is a plastic lining. Or the cartons that we get milk in or other stuff is cardboard or some other reclaimed material, but the inside is a plastic lining to keep the liquid from weakening the structure of the Tetra container or so on.
Well,
so it was quite scary.
I think it's been about 15 years since I first heard that.
Yeah.
Why would it take so long for an obvious public health hazard to even get public attention at all? I mean, I haven't heard any more lately about that. And of course, I don't think about it unless somebody reminds me to think about it.
Well, this presenter portrayed it more in the context of children's health and the health of young children particularly. So
we can go ahead and consume the stuff, and it's too late for us? Well,
I think the presenter was trying to suggest that we need to find better solutions to plastic packaging. Although it's safer or contains less harmful chemicals than at some point in the past, but they are still not safe enough.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even very cooperative when it comes to garbage bags because, I find that if you buy these these supposedly non-polluting garbage bags, they all break before you get to the garbage chute. And it is not a happy day when that happens. So I hoard these. They're not even bringing them to me anymore. They're now using paper bags, and the man putting them on my counter said they break. So he's had paper bags that have broken because they're not strong enough to carry all the stuff that I buy at this exorbitant price. So my goodness, what a topic we have started off with. Okay. Thank you, Tariq. If you have anything to add, you've got the floor. So,
No, I was thinking perhaps Erica might want to comment on this new NATO line that NATO nuclear weapons have been seamlessly integrated into the Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Yes. Erica, are you still with us? I don't think so. I think oh, here you go. Yeah. Erica, tell us what you think.
I was mentioning that a few things that Tariq touched on. Number one, I read the Reaching Critical Will newsletter, and that by Ray Atchison and others helps to bring the news every day and also every week of the NPT Review Conference Preparatory Committee. So it's called Reaching Critical Will, and you can get it by email. And I found it to be extremely useful over the years to tell us about each government's approach, less so about NATO's approach. And Tariq mentioned the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. I wrote an op-ed for the Hill Times last week on that, which they featured in their weekly newspaper on page 11. And as a result, my university featured it and so on. It was about Zaporizhzhia and then also what can be done. And I suggested the United Nations Emergency Peace Service that would be established only for the power plant. Obviously, Ukraine and Russia would not agree to it, but the idea was that there would be some sort of a UNEPS that would be put in place now. So I did hear back from people at NATO who condemned the idea and said it was naive and idealistic. And I also heard back from people in Canada like Robin Collins, Walter Dorn, and the World Federalists, Fergus Watt, and so on, saying that the idea was worth pursuing, but there would be a UN veto, which is not necessarily true because the UNEF won, and UNEF was not vetoed by the Security Council. It was put forward as a General Assembly resolution. And so it might be possible to, but anyway, another person wrote me who's in charge of NATO operations, former, now a professor, and he said that he thought that the Americans would be ready with a black swan, what's called a black swan event, where if it does somehow melt down, then the Americans would come in. How would that happen, Tariq? I don't know. You know about the IAEA and the plans. They surely must have some kind of a plan. If the last power line is cut, or if there's mines. So I really want to focus today on the Zaporizhzhia. I know that pesticides that Saran Wrap are evil and wrong, and I'm in the process of myself of wrapping everything properly. But I do think that the big thing on the horizon in the next 2 months would be a possible nuclear meltdown in Europe, which would affect billions of people, which is what I wrote in the op-ed. Thanks for this opportunity.
So, Erica, the Zaporizhzhia power plant has 4 electric power lines. There are 3 750 kilowatt lines and 1 330 kilowatt line. So the 2 of the 750 high voltage kilowatt lines have been destroyed. So there are only 2 power lines left, the 750 and the 330. And so it is, unfortunately, the Ukrainians who are shelling the power line. There are 20 generators at Zaporizhzhia. That's 3 diesel generators for each of the 6 reactors, plus 2 extra ones. And so whenever the power line goes down, these generators provide power. 5 of the 6 reactors are in cold shutdown, so they don't need very much power. 1 reactor is kept in what's called hot shutdown because they need to generate steam for various purposes. So these are generators have enough fuel to keep the power going, so there isn't loss of station power. And then the power line goes up after 3 or 4 days, and then the whole cycle repeats itself. And also the spent fuel cooling ponds, according to the State National Regulatory Inspectorate of Ukraine, can also survive without power. The water temperature would rise to about 70 degrees, but it wouldn't go above that. With the collapse of the dam, the reservoir from which the power plant draws cooling water has depleted a little bit, about 1 centimeter a day, but a new canal is being dug to provide water from another source to bring up the level of that reservoir that provides the cooling water for the Zaporizhia power plant. So the 6 reactors themselves have not been shelled, and nobody here is actually concerned about somebody hitting the reactors or there being a reactor meltdown. Of course, no one can rule out anything completely, but the whole situation in Zaporizhia is about the power lines being shelled, going offline, coming back online. Russian troops, of course, being in the power plant, and the IAEA is not happy that the Russians have put in military equipment inside the reactor halls, including small tanks and so on, which cause unnecessary stress to the Ukrainian staff. And the Ukrainian staff stay a few days, and then they have to cross the front line to go to the village of Enerhodar, where they live, which is on the Ukrainian area controlled by Ukraine. So, of course, the staff are not very happy. They are away from their families. They are stressed because they're in a power plant under occupation. So the IAEA has stationed 6 safety personnel who rotate through the plant every 2 or 3 weeks to provide technical assistance for ensuring that all the safety systems are working. So for the time being, I wouldn't be concerned about a reactor meltdown at Zaporizhia. People might disagree with that, but that's my view.
I've written 2 op-eds on this, and both in the Hill Times, and one of them pointed out, and the editors pointed out, that the Ukrainians and the Russians are shelling. So you're saying just the Ukrainians are shelling their own plant?
Well, the Russians have occupied the plant, so why would they shell the plant itself?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's...
Yeah, they're not. Everyone here in Vienna knows that the shelling is unfortunately from the Ukrainian side, and it's only on the power line, so the Ukrainians are not stupid. And it's basically to keep this issue in the news. So you haven't heard anything about the power lines for a while, because there's other news. For a while, there was this story about mines being put on the roofs of reactor units 3 and 4. The very next day, BBC published a satellite image which showed that there were none. So these theatrics go on from both sides to keep the issue in the news. Unfortunately, in the IAEA Board of Governors, there is no stomach to agree on a resolution or a decision that nuclear power plants should not be in a war zone, because some countries want to leave open the option of bombing the Iranian nuclear power plants. So there is a lot of hypocrisy on this all around, and different people have different interests, unfortunately.
Tariq, are you hearing that the Russians are bombing the hotel where the IAEA team is staying? That is what I read in an IAEA
I would doubt that very much, because the Russians were very happy that the IAEA team came there. The Ukrainians, of course, were not, because it again is another blow to the sovereignty claim of Ukraine over the nuclear power plants, which obviously are their property on their territory, which is under occupation. So there's a lot of this disinformation that comes out every now and then. I have not seen a report from the IAEA about that the last time I checked, and I can go to the IAEA website again. I'm sure the IAEA would has
It
put up.
was a quote from a UN official on the IAEA press release. So I used it, but I ended up cutting it because I only had 700 words. So essentially, the female, I remember, was a female UN official claiming that the Russians were bombing the hotel where the IAEA team is staying. So that's quite serious. But I can send you that. We don't need to get into that. But I think the main we're worried about is reactor 4, which I understand last week was going into cold storage.
Yeah, so they're switching the reactors from cold storage to hot storage. IAEA wants all reactors to be in cold storage, but and to have an alternative source to generate the steam that is needed.
Can you explain what's the difference? Cold and hot storage. That's not familiar to me.
Well, in a cold storage, the reactor is completely shut down, and therefore it does not need, it is not generating much heat other than that from the fuel which is already in the reactor. In a hot shutdown, it means that it is basically ticking over and it's not producing electricity. It's producing a very minimal amount of steam for various purposes.
Can both types of storage have a meltdown?
I'm sorry?
Could there be a meltdown in both types of storage or only one?
Well, the meltdown would be if the reactor was running and it lost power, and as a result of losing power, it lost the cooling water.
Right.
But after the Fukushima accident, all the reactors, particularly in Europe, went through stress, and they had to put in 2 backup systems for power and also for cooling water. So at the moment, unless somebody directly shells one of the reactors, and the reactor containment domes are strong enough to withstand certain types of fire. The spent fuel ponds also don't have a problem with meltdown, so to speak. That's more a reactor problem. So, Erica, the latest update on the IAEA website is from the 22nd of August, which basically is talking about various things, but it
just look at the third paragraph. I can't quite remember the date of it, but there was a woman there quoting saying that the hotel was being struck.
Yeah,
and the only reason
I don't know who this person is. I mean, there are no UN person there. The only people there are IAEA people. And when the reports, this is now IAEA report number 180. So anytime there's something to report, the IAEA puts up a statement online. And at the moment, there isn't any. So this is, I think, part of the propaganda war around the whole Zaporizhia issue. But anyway.
Okay. Well, thank you. Is Andre here? Where'd you go, Andre? I'm looking for you. Because you are in, where'd you go? I don't see you. Maybe Andre is not with us now, but
I am.
You are, okay, because you're in Ukraine. You ought to have a turn next to talk about what's going on in that area.
Well, I'm not actually, I don't know much. You probably know more than I do. Or the people here know more than I do what's actually happening in the Zaporizhia area around the power plant. So I can't say much about this. Mm-hmm. I'm very skeptical. I don't think it's realistic to get a civil society mission there. You know, I understand that there are good intentions, but I just don't think it's realistic at this point. But again, who knows? Who knows? A lot, I think, will be decided over the next couple of months because no one knows whether Ukraine will be successful. Ukraine is trying to advance in the south, in those areas that we're discussing right now. So far, it didn't reach much in terms of its expected counter-offensive that there were big hopes to, but the battle is not over yet. We will probably know more by the end of October. It will be obvious because, you know, the counteroffensive can't go along into November and so forth, because it just won't be physically possible at that point due to the weather and the climate and the soil to, expect any serious military advances. So in a few months, we will have either a situation that will be similar to the one we have now. It may be somewhat more stable, because for a while there will probably be a pause in the fighting next to that area. Or it might change drastically. And, if Ukraine is successful, then of course, the power plant will change hands and will become again under Ukrainian control. So
Your loudness, if you could lean at the mic a little closer. So
I'm speaking right into the mic now. I don't know.
yeah,
Do you
that's
hear me?
better. That's better. Keep going.
So basically what I'm saying is that probably toward the second half of October, we will see whether the situation is similar to the way it is today, or if it is different in that particular area around the Zaporizhzhia power plant, because that is exactly the area where today Ukrainian military is trying to go on the offensive. And so far it had limited successes, but the battle is going on, and it will probably go on till mid-October or so. And, then it will be clear whether the Ukrainians were successful or not. So one way or another, there will probably be a little bit more certainty in that particular area of the front lines in the second half of October.
Well, now I read or have the impression from, I don't know where, that one reason they're not making much progress is that they didn't get the planes they say they needed. They've been complaining all along that they really, really need planes. Now, I think Denmark and maybe somebody else has offered to give them planes. I don't imagine they can get them and get everybody trained and ready to use them.
That won't happen till probably next spring. So it's not going to have a direct effect on the events of the next few months.
Okay. That's what I figured. But if they had them now, is it everybody's agreement that would make a big difference? That maybe the real reason they're not doing so well is they do not have the planes or the equipment they need.
This is war. We don't know. We simply don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
We can, it's one of the excuses that often is heard today in Ukraine why any progress is so slow in terms of liberating territory. But is that true? Will planes be a game changer, or will it just not lead to much? Who knows? It's impossible to predict.
Okay, now that while I got you pinned down, let me change to a different question, because there's a party a couple of days ago here, and we're having another party on Tuesday to which you're all invited by Zoom. But the thing was that some of the people there were talking about having had indirect contact with the peace movement in Russia and in Ukraine. And my impression is there ain't no such thing, that it's not possible for people to be anything like organized enough to call them a peace movement. You might find a few people here or there, but could they interact enough? Tell me, is it possible for any group of people to continue functioning as doing peace work? I'm thinking, for example, what's happened with the Moscow-Helsinki group? I had a conversation about a year ago with Dmitry Makarov, who was, I think, in Voronezh. Is he, and I think that Ponomarov had already left the country a couple of years ago. Do people all have to flee the way you did? Or are there people still able to function at all as peace activists in Russia?
I just can say a couple of words as far as I know the situation. First of all, hello everyone. Hello, dear colleagues and friends, and I'm happy to be here once again. 1 month later. As for the situation in Russia, I would say that it's not really possible to do anything openly in that country right now, because all independent, more or less independent organizations or initiatives have been closed down, all the way from independent media, independent newspapers, radio stations, to organizations like the International Memorial or the Helsinki Group. They're having, most of them have been declared either foreign agents or so-called unwanted organizations. Cooperations with both of those categories can entail a penalty up to a sentence in prison, which is why any activity that I can ever imagine of inside Russia would be undercover, would be clandestine, and so there, as far as I know, there are Navalny's supporters still active in the country, but this is more like a guerrilla guerrilla organization. No, there's no open discussions on any matters. For example, Greenpeace has been declared a foreign agent and an unwanted organization, and if you cooperate with them, cooperations may range from being employed by that organization to, for example, being interviewed by its people. So it's very widely understood. It can really be punished by a sentence in a prison. So no, it's an atmosphere of fear and repression, and I think everything that's going on, and I'm sure things are going on. It's all under the ground.
So you don't have any way of getting familiar with what's really going on.
Well, I hear anecdotal evidence from my friends, from my fellow thinkers, from my colleagues, and people do things, but there's no open discussion about that. It's more like a guerrilla story.
Okay. Andrei, how about in Ukraine? We were talking about the attitude of Ukrainian peace workers, and I said, as far as I'm concerned, they all support Zelensky's approach, except for I do know of some guy named Yuri, starts with an S, who's I think quite a pacifist.
Yeah, I know him.
We talk about what that's like. How many people? Well, are you in touch with those folks, and do you even get along with those folks?
With whom?
Well, with the people who I would say are real old-fashioned pacifists.
I try to get along with everyone. That's my approach. I believe that people who are sincere pacifists certainly should have their rights protected in Ukraine, and the fact that they are under some pressure right now, and there have been some charges against Yuri, certainly isn't a good sign. However, we should also remember that this is nothing compared to the absolutely criminal behavior of the Russian government compared to anyone in Russia who shows any sign of dissent. There's just a long list of thousands and thousands of cases. So I definitely am on the side of Yuri and his colleagues who stand for the right not to for pacifism in Ukraine. I think it's a big mistake if Ukrainian authorities try to put forward any charges against them and so forth. I also understand the position of the majority of Ukrainian civil society that is in support of armed struggle today to liberate their country that was invaded. I try to press, and you know that's my position, that what I'm saying is I'm not against armed struggle, but I try to say that there are many other things that can be done non-violently that can bring help Ukraine. Like nonviolent struggle, or like seeing, stop demonizing all Russian people, which is a big political mistake I think that Ukraine has done today, and try to find allies within Russian society itself. So there is a lot that can be done, as well as a more thought through policy toward Ukrainian citizens who are today under occupation, especially those who have been under Russian control for the last 9 years in the Donbass and in Crimea. So that's definitely things that can be done. Again, I respect the position of different groups in Ukraine, and I hope that the Ukrainian government will have enough sense not to go, against a handful of pacifists that they do have in the country today.
Thank
But
you.
again, it's important to understand. We hear about some negative things happening in Ukraine, and unfortunately, that's true. But we also should keep in mind that these same things, when you look at Russia, are worse 1,000-fold, not more.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, I think we should give room to a wider conversation now. We've talked to almost an hour, close to it. I'm glad to see some old faces that I was a little bit worried about. Peter Wadhams, I'm delighted that you're with us. Are you feeling better? I know Peter's been in hospital. How are you doing now?
Well, I'm not actually better, but I'm sort of less bad, I suppose. I just still have a lot of symptoms left over from both from COVID and from the other thing I've got, which is the
How are you doing? I take heart from the fact that you're here with us. I can see you at least.
Yeah.
And I want to say hi to Paul Werbos also. Paul, unmute yourself because I want to ask you what you've been up to. I've been getting messages from aboard a ship or someplace where you've been cruising, and Paul and Peter you've both worked together a little bit. I think maybe, I don't know whether you've ever finished whatever project you were doing together, but you're going to write something jointly. Paul, how are you, and what's going on in your world?
Well, I share the same world with you guys.
All right.
And there have been incredible ups and downs. There are days when I feel like we're all going to die, and days when I figure we've got hope of fixing things. This past month, I was relatively quiet because when they predicted a huge heat wave here and wildfires, my wife said, okay, we've got a simple solution. And she found a quick cruise to the Arctic Circle. And I posted some photos, and now I'm in deep shit with the Russians because I included photos of a major base that the Russians have up near the Arctic Circle that's supposed to be part of Norway, but there's some question. There are some questions about whose it is and what they're planning to do up there in this northern part of the Arctic Circle.
Was
I
that
actually
Pyramiden in Spitsberg? Spitsberg and Svalbard? Spitsberg and Svalbard, Pyramiden?
Yes, Pyramiden. So I'm
Yeah.
not the only one who knows about it. I'm glad someone else knows about it. Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's an old Soviet mining town, but they've held on to it for some time.
If you send me something on it, I might be able to get away with No, I cannot. Okay, I'm in deep shit. But the bottom line is, yeah, that's a place that people in your business, the peace studies should really be working on, because it's part of that picture. It's not part of the world that I monitor. I just accidentally landed there. But the pictures we took by accident were enough to get some people deeply upset.
But Svalbard, so the administration of Svalbard, which as you say is a Norwegian territory, they call Pyramiden a living museum. So it is open to the public, but I was unaware that the Russians now have active military applications there, because it was originally a coal mining district, I think. But they've turned it into a bit of a museum.
I'm not claiming that they have an active military operation there. I am not claiming that. Now, as for what they do have, apparently there's some sensitivities about it.
Oh dear, okay. I know Jan Mayen, another one of the islands out there, is playing a pretty critical role in monitoring the North Atlantic, and it's a bit further south, but it's right between Greenland and the Faroe Islands. But Pyramiden is very far north. It's right on, I think, the northern coast of Svalbard, isn't it?
I would be happy to send Meta the link.
Yeah.
And if they shoot me, make sure you download the photos. I don't really think that'll happen, but we live in a very strange world these days.
Well, let me ask Peter Wadhams, do you know anything about this place, Peter? Because you're a northern Arctic guy.
I'm going there quite often. In fact, one of the amusing things is that there's a jetty where coal is exported, because there's still an active coal mine. And the last couple of times I've been there, there's been a collier loading up at the jetty, and when I looked at where it was bound, it turned out that it's going that the regular trade is with Newcastle, and there's there's an ancient joke that the most useless thing you can do is to send coals to Newcastle, because because Newcastle was the centre for coal mining. So here there is now an active trade in coals to Newcastle, which illustrates the insanity of the world at the moment.
I was thinking about Peter a lot on this trip. If I had better internet connection, I would have been in touch. But, even satellites have problems as you get to the Arctic Circle. But one of the things I learned was that there had been a massive plan by a very serious businessman that would dump fertilizer to exactly the right channel of the Gulf Stream to accelerate the kind of things Peter Ward has been talking about. We could have been in trouble with a really serious ocean problem years ago, except the man had mysterious, strange, bad luck. And they were all wondering, where did this mysterious bad luck come from? And they're still trying to figure it out. But thanks to the mysterious bad luck, they didn't dump a whole bunch of phosphates right where the archaea would just love to eat them up. So this was a very interesting trip.
Oh my. Okay, well, thank you.
Pyramiden has also the world record for the northernmost statue of Lenin. And I think the statue is still there in the community, whereas in most former Soviet places, Lenin was pulled down decades ago. There's a famous photo of Lenin's head in the parking lot of a KFC outside Moscow.
That's one of the photos I got in trouble with. I have pictures proving that what you're saying is true, and a few other things.
Yeah, well, in fact, as I understand it, they're going around putting statues back up of not only Lenin, but also of even Stalin.
Oh, boy.
So we don't need to go there. Leda had her hand up a long time ago, and I've made you wait. So now you get to speak, Leda.
I was just wondering, is there any chance of starting negotiations? Have they fought their guts inside out, both of them, to decide to start negotiations? And also, I read somewhere, I don't know if there's any truth to it. Other members in the group may know better. I read that Biden wants to get elected, like Bush way back, and that's why he invaded Iraq. So this is why he said that they want the NATO to expand, and this would lead to a war in Ukraine, because we didn't have. That is the presidents of the US to get elected, they need a war. And when, for example, when Reagan was in trouble, his popularity was going down. He invaded, I think, was it Panama or something like that? Grenada. So I was wondering if there is any truth to this. For example, Biden said that about 3 months after the beginning of the war, he said when there was a meeting about negotiations and all of that in Turkey, actually, southern Turkey, Biden said that no, now it's the opportunity to weaken Russia. That's why we're not going to negotiate. So there's no hope, like if that's the mentality. But could it be any truth to the fact that he wants to get elected again? That's why he wants a war.
Mhm.
That's what I
Can I
read.
answer that?
I'm not sure if it's true or what. If there's any
You
truth.
know, maybe I'm closer to Washington, D.C. than anyone else in this call.
Mhm.
Yes.
I have some right to make my speculations. I am very worried about the coming year. I've been focusing more on the climate and internet issues, as Meta knows. We all have to specialize. But I've been feeling very guilty that we are entering a period where there are other conflicts that really demand a lot of more complete attention. But I would say the biggest conflict we are worried about right here, to be honest, is 2024. And the conflict between such strange personalities as Donald Trump and Biden, both suffering from medical problems, both heavily reliant on outside advisors. That's the biggest concern here. There are actually people here who are worried about the possibility of race war in the United States. We don't know how it's going to turn out, and it's not my specialty, but sometimes I feel guilty because I have to pay attention to other issues, which are also life or death.
Thank you, Paul. That's cheering. I feel better already. Anybody else on this one? I think we're really in over our heads when we begin speculating about the outcome of the next election, or even how people are going to campaign for it. But if anybody wants to go there, I'll let you attempt.
I'll say something, Meta. I've been engaging with some Americans who are working on peace. So Professor Frederick Pearson, who is the former director of Wayne State's University's Peace and Conflict Studies program, and also other people. And one of the things we've been talking about is exactly what Lida was talking about, which is how much is the military industrial complex in the United States contributing to the fact that they won't go to the negotiating table.
Yeah, exactly.
We've read it in the New York Times that 500,000 Ukrainians and Russians have died.
Yeah.
So as a
Exactly.
mother of a child, who
Not
has
enough
died,
to get them to sit down.
how many have to die before they go to the negotiating table? And so how do we push them to the table? In my article last week, I wrote about carrots. We need to dangle carrots, not just sticks, and say, if you do go to the negotiating table, then we will give you this and that, more carrots rather than always sticks. And I am concerned that Americans don't want to go to the negotiating table because of the constituencies that profit from selling and giving Ukraine billions of dollars worth of equipment. So that whole argument, you can call it neo-Marxist if you want, but some people call it wag the dog here, Lida. It's the idea that the Americans go to war in order to up their standing before they go into an election, a national election.
Exactly.
So we don't
Story
know.
repeats itself.
Andre has his hand up. Andre.
Yes, first I would ask, of course I want peace. Everybody wants peace. My question is, would it be right to go to negotiations with Hitler in 1944?
Not everybody is Hitler.
Now, look, today the attitude in Ukraine is predominantly that Ukraine has been invaded. It has the right to protect itself, protect its people, and to liberate its territory. And that's what the majority of people today in Ukraine believe. That's the reality. Are there people that would want a different? Yes, there are. Might the public opinion change? Yes. But this war is not continued by the U.S. It's not a war of the U.S. military-industrial complex. It's
I'm not saying
aggressive
that.
war that was
I'm saying-
imposed on Ukraine by Putin and his government, and by the regime and from the Kremlin that actually has been fighting his own people for over 20 years now. You know, he was all these 20 years, he was fighting against his own people. He was killing his own people for the last 9 years, but especially for the last year and a half, without any doubt, in mass, he has been fighting a war against Ukraine. So that's the reality we face today, and we need to understand this. It's not a proxy war. Ukraine, people in Ukraine have agency. They have the right to decide whether they want to
I think
fight
concern
for
is
the
just that
liberation of their
because
land
the
or not.
Ukrainians are using drones against Moscow, and because the concern is that because Ukrainians are taking the war off Ukrainian sovereign territory and moving it toward Moscow using drones, because of the whole mutiny of Prigozhin and all the implications of maybe there's internal conflict, people are worried around the world that we're being drawn into a proxy war that could lead to a world war because of nuclear weapons. And so it's time to go to the negotiating table. It doesn't mean that there's going to be a frozen conflict. It doesn't mean that Ukraine will necessarily lose. It's just time to get to the table.
Look, I don't mind negotiations, obviously. I'm for negotiations. However, I believe that people, I just today listened to a program where some guy from Washington and someone that probably, you know, knows what he's speaking about, has been speaking about exactly what you mentioned, the fears that, you know, if Putin loses power, someone like Prigozhin comes to power and so forth, things will be even worse. I think these fears have no basis for one simple reason. Any person today that will come to power after Putin will, in Russia, will in order to stay in power, will have to offer something to his own society and especially to his own elite, not because of the goodness of his heart, but simply because that's the only way he can stay in power. And the first thing that he will do is try to find some kind of settlement with Ukraine and stop this senseless war. That's you know, as soon as Putin's got whoever else is, he might be worse than Putin personally, but he will need to do that if he doesn't want to stay in power. If Prigozhin would take Moscow on June 24th, the war would end in June. There would be other bad things happening in Russia maybe, but the war in Ukraine would end before the end of the month. Now, he didn't do that, and now he's dead because Putin killed him. Okay, but that's, you know, that's the world where we live.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Alexei, you have your hand, and I want to say hi to Ingrid Sommerkorn. I'll get to you in a minute, Ingrid, dear. Alexei.
I was just going to say one thing that seems important to me concerning negotiations. Negotiations is always a good thing. I mean, it's better than shooting generally, but we have to face the reality. Negotiations are only possible when both sides, both parties mean to negotiate, when they are serious about their intentions to make a deal, to make a compromise. But in our present situation, we see a complete lack of trust between the parties, be it the West, be it Ukraine, be it Russia, and we see even worse, we see a complete lack of credibility. And here I mean Russia, here I mean Putin personally. He's not the person you would trust because he has been so insincere, to say the least. He has repeatedly said that he only will abide by his by any agreements if they're favorable to him. But that's not when an agreement is favorable and you abide by it. It's not an agreement anymore. It's not your word of honor. Your word of honor is when it's unfavorable to you, but you still stick to it because you have promised. I think there is in the global politics there is no personality that would be farther from that credibility than Putin is currently. In that light, I don't think any negotiation is possible. Only probably a mock negotiation at best.
I just would like to add, maybe I just add one word. A good example. 2 months ago, Putin, when this coup attempt was happening in Russia, he promised to Mr. Prigozhin that Mr. Prigozhin would be safe and free of any charges. And that was the condition when Prigozhin stopped his march on Moscow. 2 months later, he's been killed. So that's how much. Yeah, this is a personal promise of Putin to a person that he knew for 30 years. You know, he gave him this promise and killed him 2 months later. Okay, so you know,
there's another issue about negotiations and what we can agree with in arms control. And in arms control, the technical means to ensure and monitor compliance is right at the center about whether an agreement means something or not. I was very impressed. You mentioned the United Nations website. At the United Nations website, there was a meeting of the Security Council just a couple of weeks ago on the creation of a new UN agency for artificial intelligence. The Secretary General was pushing that very hard. The Security Council meeting is up on the website. And at that meeting, it was very amazing to me to see how the politics unfold. There are hordes and hordes of lobbyists who want to use this as a way to get money for their personal projects. And a lot of UN efforts have become useless because they listen to those people. But at this meeting of the Security Council, the major powers all said, there is something we want from this new UN agency. And it's not what the lobbyists were asking for. All of the great military powers, with one exception, all of the great military powers were saying, we would like this new UN agency to include some technical capacity vital to compliance and monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted a new system using the most advanced artificial intelligence to provide open, transparent warning to any nation on Earth, which might be attacked from the sky. And I found that very exciting. It's exciting because there is new science, but I found it depressing because most of the people trying to make money and organize it are not interested in new science. And so they could very easily just throw the money away and will never develop the capability. But I personally was excited by the hope that maybe we might create open new science that would be critical to the monitoring process. I still think there's some hope. On good days, I think the hope is real. On bad days, I look at the lobbyists and give up.
Well, what can anybody do? Could any government, a foreign government, could Canada, do you have any good ideas how to promote this?
I know that there is a global digital compact group under the United Nations, and I know there is a group creating an advisory committee to help create this new AI agency. And those things are advertised on the web. They are listening to opinions from groups that might be relevant and might be stakeholders. So I think there are opportunities to weigh in to try to get them to stop paying attention to getting money to the local bosses and try to get it to global survival.
Well, you know, I don't like this term digital global compact, because it's almost so similar to just plain global compact. That's the organization of corporations that I think Kofi Annan put together, of corporations that want to be good guys and obey the, responsible people. So I think they ought to pick a different name that is less confusing.
Well, I'm not the Secretary General, so I don't know why he named it that way.
All right, never mind. If he wants to, I'm glad that he's up to doing it. Maybe we need to talk a bit about developments in AI. I know that you see that as, and of course you're the guy who should know, being sort of the father of the whole thing. That you are concerned about the real risks of AI. I personally use GPT-4 about 20 times a day, and it does everything for me. It tells me what kind of makeup to use. It tells me how far two cities are apart. It tells me how much baking powder to put in my biscuits. Anything I want to know, it tells me. Yesterday, I was using it, and it gave me a good suggestion. It said, "Why don't you do web scraping?" And I didn't know what web scraping was, but I looked it up, and yeah, that's something I should use. And it knew what I needed to do and was giving me good tips. Oh, I am so happy with this thing. It's so good. And I can't believe that everybody is scared of it. I think it's my best friend already.
So, okay, yeah, no, there's a huge amount of debate. And this is one of the two issues I really have put energy into. But one of the things that terrifies me is how much people know, which is not true. Bottom line, there are a lot of things that commentators will tell you about AI, for good or ill, in either direction, that are totally incorrect. And it's kind of scary. I think people are making money by pretending to know stuff they don't know. So GPT, they use the term now generative artificial intelligence, GAI. There are even, I hate to say it, idiot, dishonest commentators who will tell you, oh, we used to worry about artificial general intelligence. Now it's the new thing, it's GAI, and everything else is obsolete. Well, right now, there are a few companies making some money from a product which is very powerful, but is absolutely nothing compared to what's already in the pipeline. The capacities of things like ChatGPT, they can do tremendous things, but they can also be very badly misused. I might think of it as like having a certain kind of dog. You know, there are a lot of times in life when we have a certain kind of dog. I think of the spirit of Loki. And leashed, it can be very useful. Unleashed, it can kill you. And you have to know where to put the leash. But you need to understand that all of the generative AI that you're hearing about that's making waves now is based on a foundation of a few basic methods. And to be honest, they're methods I developed 40 years ago. And there's trivial applications of things that we developed 40 years ago. It's just a matter of people getting around to applying them. And I promise you, the applications in the pipeline now in places you haven't heard about, in places like the military, the kind of applications I have seen with my own eyes in the military are way beyond anything you imagine if you're looking in the world of ChatGPT. I have certainly seen experts appear on TV saying, I know X is impossible. And I saw X 2 weeks before with my own eyes, really working, as it happened for a military contract.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real challenge. One of the reasons why I hope the UN agency works is because we need a forum where it's sufficiently open and transparent that we don't repeat the kind of confusion that led to World War I, where nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah, what I want to know, Paulo, is there any way I can keep my new friend, GPT-4, who does all these wonderful stunts for me and is so helpful? I honestly I save probably a couple of hours a day in work by using this thing. And I want to keep it, but I hear you that it's going to be dangerous. How do I know, how can we keep this good friend? And not,
how do you keep your dog on a leash? It would help us keep the dogs on a leash better if the UN agency were helping people to understand what their dog is and how to control these kind of dogs.
Do I have to worry about this thing that tells me, you know, I ask it personal questions sometimes.
If you trust it too far, you'll get confused. Because there's a lot of garbage in, garbage out. There's a lot of repeating popular wisdom that sells in certain quarters that's not true. You got to be very careful about controlling that dog.
If I may add a comment there, there was a chatbot a number of years ago. I'm trying to remember the name of it, where it was an early form of this AI. It wasn't as detailed as ChatGPT, but it got into a lot of trouble when they imported the entire contents of Urban Dictionary, which is a slang dictionary, into the AI system, which suddenly taught the AI how to swear and how to use offensive language at people. And it immediately developed a fondness for calling people very offensive names. So they immediately, after about a week of this, had to remove the contents of Urban Dictionary from the AI system to revert it back to a standard where it was actually acceptable for general public use. I've noticed with GPT, it is good for broad questions, but if you ask it the specific things, it tends to rapidly start to break down if you ask it for anything very detailed. And the other thing to be aware of Meta is that it gives a disclaimer that it has not been updated in about 3 years. So its knowledge ends around 2021, which is during the height of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, I know that. Of course, it tells you that. And it also tells you, oh, I make mistakes. At the very bottom of everything, it says we make mistakes. Well, so does everybody make mistakes. Google makes mistakes. Wikipedia makes mistakes. I make mistakes, and you make more than your share. So I don't blame people for making mistakes. If I don't blame them anywhere more than I would blame, anybody else. And of course I have to check, and sometimes it's given me a reference to, I want a list of people writing books on a particular topic, and it tells me the name of somebody who's dead. And okay, so I have to realize he hasn't heard yet that this guy died. So, okay, so you make adjustments for the fact that people, even GPT-4 can make mistakes.
I was alarmed to hear of the Faculty of Law professor that was asking it to draft responses to a court, and it completely fabricated the sexual assault trial and made up references to legal journals that didn't exist in cases that never happened. And that was extremely alarming to hear.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Anyway, I've led this conversation astray, and we've been neglecting a lot of people who probably want to talk about your particular issues. So let's see who's here. Some people have already given up hope and gone away. People who were here a few minutes ago have gone away. Charles Tarber, how are you, and how are things in Vukovar, Croatia?
Well, I don't know if people know, but I had a rather serious operation about 2 months ago now.
You had a personal surgery?
Yes, I had my aortic valve was replaced, and so I'm still recovering a bit.
You say you
Had it too last January.
What? Oh, you had it last January?
Yes, January 30. Aortic
Yeah.
valve, 2 bypasses, part of the aorta, 5 hours open heart surgery.
Something like that.
I know what you mean.
So you
So-
both had it.
Well, I certainly did, and Leda is saying that she had it too. So, but it's encouraging to see that you've recovered, Leda.
Yes, and have to exercise a lot. And
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, it's been several months, but now what I do is I skip rope to exercise.
Yeah.
No, I have trouble
And
with.
how are you feeling?
Sorry,
How are you feeling? How are you feeling?
I am feeling much better than before. Sometimes I am really euphoric, I would say, unless I need to take those drugs for heart failure. And then I feel tired, dizzy, nauseated. Nah, no good. I have tried 3 different ones, but I feel better without any drugs.
Yeah.
So
So I will see a cardiologist in a couple of weeks. So We'll see what she says.
Well, I didn't know that you were missing, Charles. You've shown up almost every time. So maybe a month ago, did you miss us? I don't know.
I was there for about 10 minutes.
I see. Well, welcome back. I didn't realize that you've been through the ringer. Okay, thank you both.
I can tell you, I was feeling very, very well. After the first 2 months, I was flying, very happy. But then I was told I have to take drugs for blood I mean, part of the problem could be that's unusual is that my blood pressure is too low. And those drugs reduce blood pressure. That's why I feel dizzy. But anyway, you may be happy with those. I don't know.
I'd like to ask Alan Haber how things are in Ann Arbor. What's going on with you folks?
Well, thank you, Meta, and all. I'm actually in a little village of 500 people in Burgundy, France.
Oh,
For the last month and a half or two, and we'll be back in Ann Arbor after the Labor Day holiday.
is that where Odile is from?
That's where Odile, we're in her family house of 1666 carved in the roof beam. And we just
No,
today,
I've meant to ask you. Her name is Huguenot, right? And
Huguenot.
is this the name they adopted because of their religion? Is she was
exactly.
the family a Huguenot family?
Yeah, exactly where the Huguenot actual connection came in the family is a little unclear. There's some relics of that time, but the founder of this house was the organizer of the Radical Socialist Party in the Revolution of 1848. So Odile comes from a vibration of change the world. And is definitely a dissenter on most fronts of conformity.
Well, what is village like in life like in Burgundy these days?
It's very, very quiet, and there's no news of the outer world. It's the old commons is somewhat privatized, but it's an agricultural area. And the bakery unfortunately closed. The little taqueria across the street didn't get enough business to support itself. Anyhow, it's a small town.
I once spent a week in a little town, not too close to there though. It was called Condom, Condom. I think this may have had some historical connection, but
in olden days, there were 6 factories here, we heard, that made wooden shoes. But none of that remains.
Okay.
It's an agricultural area, and many people work in the neighboring town of Chalon on the Stone River. So,
well, it sounds like a good way to spend August, so I'm glad you're enjoying it. Let's go to California and talk to Marilyn and Bill. See how the animals are doing.
I did want to say a couple things as to what's going on. In my own campaign in Ann Arbor since 2009 has been that the center of the city should be developed as a community commons in the form of commonly pooled resources self-managed by the users rather than a possession of the city government or some corporation. And we've moved quite far on that, and we won the ballot question to establish this in the city charter. But the local politics have changed significantly, and me and the other principal advocates for the commons have been purged out of the organization in a very unpleasant situation. So the war against the commons has come to Ann Arbor just as I came to find this book called The War Against the Commons by Ian Angus that I published this year, which I greatly recommend. that identifies, as did my friends Peter Linebaugh and David Bollier, the commons as a central question in the organization of society, built more around the non-monetary than the monetary capitalist system. And not only was the dispossession on the commons from the 12th and 13th centuries and the 16th and 17th century, but it is going on now even more so, particularly in Asia, Latin America, and Africa, where the corporation and the government are taking over what has been traditional land farmed by the indigenous people. And while they say this is more productive for the feeding the world, the fact is that these present dispossessions are less productive, more inefficient. And as Eleanor Ostrom, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics and for her book on the governance of the commons, demonstrated that when commonly pooled resources are self-managed by the users, they're more productively managed. And I'll just want to share the little ditty that many people know, that the man or woman who the law locks up the man or woman who steals the goose from off the commons, but leaves the greater villain loose, who steals the commons from the goose. I think many people have heard that. That's from the 1600s. But this book concludes with the law locks up, the last verse of this poem, the law locks up the man or woman who steals the goose from off the commons.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Adam, you've got your hand up.
And the geese will still the commons lack till they go and steal it back. And that is a struggle that is going on. The governments are stealing the commons, and until people organize to get the commons back, we are in increasingly difficult questions on so many fronts. And this is at the base of much of the war that is going on. And so the struggle for the commons should be in one of your central questions in what is necessary for saving the world. And I'll note also the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, their disarm committee, has been dealing with peace questions, and they have several proposals now toward how to organize for a world peace treaty, a woman-led organizational effort toward a peace treaty that engages all the outstanding questions and puts them on the peace table.
Well, what I want is somebody who can give me a solution of how you're going to enforce any kind of international law. We already have a law forbidding aggression. That should take care of almost everything, including the war of Russia against Ukraine, which was in every sense of the word an aggression, but there is no way to enforce it. And so why have another treaty if you can't enforce it? We don't
that is what a treaty would develop. And one of the projects they're considering, called Project for Enduring Peace, is to describe more accurately and effectively how there is an enforcement mechanism for agreements.
What's your proposal for how to enforce international law?
I'm only representing with the conversation that's going on, but I'll be glad at the next September World Global to report on how this process is going on. I think it's very important. And
okay.
as you know, I am a maker of the peace table. That because if there's a treaty, it's going to be have a meeting, and there'll be no meeting without a table. And the table has to be something of beauty and design that is receptive to all outstanding questions.
I haven't seen your Megiddo table. Is that it?
Yes.
Well, I'm happy to look at it. Look, we've got three people waiting in line to speak. Okay. Adam, speak quickly because I think somebody else. And then
Alan, have you read Ursula Franken's Muzak and the Commons? It's an interesting interpretation of how the commons is being destroyed by noise proliferation. It's a specific spin-off of, I think, what you're reading. And Ursula Franklin was very disturbed by the fact that whenever you go into a public space now, you're bombarded with noise, whether it be ambient music, commercial advertising, all sorts of different things. And how we're losing that aspect of the commons as well, the ability to go out and just enjoy peace and tranquility.
Okay.
I'd be happy if you could send me those references somehow in the chat.
I'll email them to you.
Please do.
Okay,
please
you
do.
can put
Thank
stuff in the chat box and everybody can see it because I'll put it up later. Charles Tauber and then Paul Werbos.
Okay, just a couple of things. We are experiencing here the consequences of climate change. Today, it was 46 degrees when I was walking.
Sorry? Today what?
I say it was 46 degrees
But
when I was walking
Oh.
today.
got it.
That's one thing. The other thing is, as I continually say every time I'm here, nobody is really dealing with the traumatic experiences and the conflict things, particularly in Africa. We're talking here about Ukraine and Europe, but we're not really talking about what is happening in places like Congo, Liberia, etc. And this is extremely important. So yeah. Also, I am in the process of writing 2 layperson's guides, which we will put out on the website free as soon as they're finished. One is on communication. It will be a self-paced online course. And the other, which I've just about started, is the one on psychology and trauma and how to deal with it at a very local level. So expect those things when they come
Thank you,
up.
Charles.
They
Okay.
will come pretty soon. So
Good. Well, take care of yourself now. Okay, let's go to Paul Werbos. And then I want to greet Victor Koganyasny. So Victor, you'll get a turn to speak in a minute, but Paul.
Yeah, so I agree very strongly with his point about the indigenous people and the management of agriculture. There was a time 2 years ago when the IEEE gave me a mandate to talk to people who really know about all the dimensions of climate problems at a level of depth which was way beyond what I see in these lobby groups. And in that search, we discovered there is a Dr. Steenbach in Brazil who has done work on how to connect the traditional practices with the real science and economics. And some of the indigenous practices lead to really serious advanced science, much more efficient than anything the big companies are trying to make a quick buck from in places like Brazil. I was hoping that a new president in Brazil would bring us back to groups like Steenbach. There was a group called Noosfera in Brazil, which was the best group in the whole world for putting these elements together. I feel very bad I haven't been able to put as much energy into climate lately because of the internet issues, which are also life or death. When you ask about the future of Ukraine, what happens when you've got drone fleets out of control attacking people you don't know? That's a little more urgent, but the climate issues are also life or death. And in the agricultural space, in the indigenous space, the practices used by native tribes can be adapted to real science. And I believe that Steenbach in Brazil, writing in Portuguese, had really critical ideas the rest of the world could benefit from a lot if only we worked harder to get the right information from the grassroots to the policy level.
Well, is there somebody you can put me in touch with, and I'll hunt this person down and have a conversation on my talk show? Because I never heard.
Okay, I have just been told that I have to run off soon, but there is a website that's in what I sent you on the 7 grand challenges. On that one pager, which I sent you many times, there's a website, buildaworld.org, which has some of the overview of this IEEE effort and where it led to. And then there is much more detailed material, which I sometimes have sent you. The link is out there. With a couple of minutes, I could send you more, but I'm not sure you want those details right now.
I want, you mentioned the name Steenberger. Is that
I
right?
believe Steenbach.
Steenbacher? Steenbach? I don't know.
Steenbach.
Well, whatever. I'll see if I can find it. Anybody else on this screen know anything about that person? No? Well, I'll hunt him down. Okay. I like new people. Thank you so much, Paul. Let's talk to Victor. Victor's in Moscow, I think, aren't you, Victor? Hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Are you in Moscow?
It is a little bit late in Moscow, so
Okay.
it is about midnight in an hour. So what would you like that I tell you? So
Oh, I want to know how things are going in Moscow. What you're in, you're a political type. You're in touch with the Yabloko people,
yes,
and I need to. Well, I mean, you are right in the center of Yabloko. I don't actually know much about Yabloko's position about the war. Since the war began, I think everybody's lying low, and I haven't heard much. I haven't heard a peep out of Yavlinsky. Tell me what Yabloko is doing, and what you can afford to do, what you can't do.
So the main task for Yabloko now is to campaign that Russia should live in peace with its neighbors. First and second, to defend political prisoners, because hundreds of people are sentenced to long terms of prison for their anti-war position. So that are two tasks. And that is, I think, more or less enough for that moment. The very, very tragic and acute.
Well, hold on now, because if you're able to say that, if you're able to take a position that sounds like you're opposing the war.
In limited scale, yes, in limited scale, in very limited, but sometimes it is very important. I think that for political prisoners, it is important that every month they get a lot of letters that are sent from Yabloko. I don't know what will be in future, whether unfortunately number of political prisoners is growing. So no signs that it will diminish. And I think it is global task to talk about political prisoners.
But how many are there?
So that is about 600 people throughout Russia that are sentenced for 7 years and more of prison, just past year and this year, for their criticizing of the war in Ukraine. So 600 people are only this past year and this year are imprisoned for 7 years and for more long term. The 7 years is the smallest, the most shortest term of imprisonment. So another way of repression that is more or less soft is assigning people as so-called foreign agents. So that are also many people that are called now foreign agents. They are not imprisoned, they are not under investigation, but they are discriminated in their options. I am very worried what will happen next year after the plebiscite that is called presidential election, what will be the next step in battle with Ukraine and in internal political situation in Russia. So that are two questions, two main questions. That are some hopes that in some months negotiation may start between Putin and Western leaders concerning Ukraine. That will be positive, I think, but it is it is in secrecy. Nothing open is said.
Now, how do you know this? This is a rumor, or do you
Rumors? Absolutely rumors. But insisted rumors that previously there were no such rumors, and Erdogan are trying much to do that. So, but nobody knows something exactly. Nobody knows. The big question is what will happen after coming March. In spring, what will happen with presidential elections and further what will be the internal what will be with the war situation and what will be the internal development of Russia. Well, thank you, Meta. So I'm very sorry. I'm really tired of what is around me and what is exactly now, and I will try to rest a little bit.
Okay, you rest, but if you feel like writing anything, of course I want to remind everybody that we have this website and people aren't using it enough. You really, if you go there and you post something, it will, and it can create quite a good conversation or quite a good discussion on the line. So please feel free to go to, I think a section, there's a page on war and weapons, and you go to the comments section. I should put this, make this available on the, at the end of this show. I'll post, if you just hang on, when you watch the edited version, I'll put up the links that you need to use to get directly to the comments that, the place where you can post your comments and have this conversation. So it'd be very helpful to hear from you, Victor. And also, now I did ask about Yavlinsky. I haven't heard a peep out of him. Is he okay, and is he speaking?
So he's continuing to lead Yabloko. He is not chairman of the party, but he continues to be the leader, politically the leader.
Will you send me? I'll send you an email. Would you send me his email address so I can?
Okay, I will do that. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, he has no much room to express his position, but we are together, and we are still continuing to do something, and I consider important things. I think that is of serious importance for today and for the future. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Meta. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate having you here, Victor. You take care now. And let me see. I want to give Marilyn and Bill a chance. We only have about 8 minutes to finish up.
Actually, what Bill is doing is more exciting. What's happened with him lately. So what I'm doing right now is not as exciting as what he's doing. So,
okay.
Anyway.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to say was that it sounds to me like the political leaders of our planet are on the verge of insanity. But given that, I had an incident arise on Thursday, I think it was. For those who don't know, I conduct a long-term study of the gray fox. Well, in doing that, I also run across other critters that are out there. Now, what I'm really talking about is the web of life that we're embedded in here. And one of the things that happened in this valley, Santa Clara Valley, was that in 1855, the last beaver was killed, and they have only recently returned. Let me put it that way. And I have my trail cameras along Matadero Creek, and we had a pair of beavers move into there last year. Now, everybody was waiting to see if this pair of beavers was going to have any babies. On Thursday, one of my trail cameras, this was at night, picked up a baby beaver outside of the creek. It was on dry land, and that caused a big stir. It got into the press, into one of the local newspapers around here, and then it was picked up by ABC Channel 7 out of San Francisco and distributed nationally. The story of this little beaver, a beaver hadn't been seen in that creek for over 160 years. But now we have a little one, at least one, maybe more. And that's going to improve the web of life in that whole ecosystem down there. And I'll leave it just at that.
That's good news. Hooray. Well, you need more than one. We got to go get some baby beavers someplace else and bring them to make friends with your baby beaver, right?
Well, in a couple of years, that baby beaver will disperse, and it will probably go north along the San Francisco Bay and come to inhabit the San Francisco Creek, which is just north from here.
Oh.
They are going to populate the whole rim of the San Francisco Bay. All the
Now,
creeks.
how are you going to do that? You need some more than one, don't you?
Oh yeah, but it's going to take a few years to do that.
Okay.
They're going to do it on their own. I'm
Really?
I'm not going to be able to step in there and say,
No, if you only have one baby beaver, you need I know physiology. I know you got to have two different kinds of
Well,
sexes. If you
yeah.
want babies, you got to have two kinds.
yeah, but what's going to happen, what is happening, it's in the process right now, is that there's a migration of beavers coming out of the South Bay, Guadalupe River, Coyote Creek, that feed into the San Francisco Bay. And that's where the beavers are
I
originating.
thought you said there weren't any, that this was a unique one.
Yeah, well, since prior to 1980, there were none. And in 1980, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife imported a group of beavers into Los Gatos Creek. Now, the beavers that are in Matadero Creek, which is some miles away, have their dispersal. They're young that have dispersed and
Okay.
are going into the.
Okay.
It'll be okay, Meta.
All right, hooray for you. Good, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
listen, we don't have much time left, but I want to say hello to my dear longtime friend Ingrid Summercorn, who is muted and she's got her camera turned off too. Ingrid, so far as I see your name though, so I know you're here, and I've known Ingrid since well, let me think. I think when I was at Harvard in 1970.
In the early 70s it was.
Early 70s. That's,
Do you understand? I can't.
Yeah, well, anyway, so are you in Hamburg?
Yes, I'm still in Hamburg, and I'm sorry I came and I had to go again, and now I can't see you any longer. because something or other.
Okay, I'll talk, I'll put this, no, I'll put a gallery on so we can all look at each
Oh,
other.
no, please.
Here
Wait a
I
minute.
am, and there
Oh,
you
yeah.
are. Ingrid is a retired professor of, I think, sociology of education, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
and at the University of Hamburg, right?
Yes, that's right.
Good. All right, how are
to
things?
Everybody of you, to all of you, I enjoyed listening to parts of your conversation. So,
Tell me how things are in Hamburg or in Germany in general. What's
gosh.
going on in the world?
Even here, our AfD, our right-wing party, the Alternative for Germany,
Yeah.
they are getting stronger and stronger. About
Really?
1% of the population. You know, it's the autocratic societies or non-democratic societies. They're spreading and spreading. So I can't talk about the whole of Germany as yet. Anyway, it's getting, and people are disenchanted, dissatisfied, and our coalition partner, the Greens, especially the Greens, they're trying to do their best, but then we have the Liberals as part of the coalition, and they are geared to a special clientele, you know, so they don't see eye to eye on lots of things, so they convey the picture, the image, so everybody thinks we have got a government that can't govern because they only fight with one another and so on. I can't talk about Germany, it's too much of a problem.
Right. But now you're saying that since the election, well, I mean, the present government's only been in power for about a year, right? And it's not, it's floundering. Is that the situation? It's not doing a very good job of it, or people are not happy with it, or what?
Well, both. I think they're trying to do their best, but you know, but then the Liberals, they're really so anxious that they gain less than 5% of the electorate. And in Germany, we have that, what do you call it? That barrier. If you don't gain 5%, you don't get into parliament or so. And so they're really trying to strengthen their profile. They say no to more or less everything. For example, I'm just to give you a tiny example. On our streets, we don't have a limit to 130 kilometers on the streets like in France and all other European states. And in the States too, I don't know about Canada, but I'm sure you can't drive as fast as you want to on your national.
Well, Germany has always allowed people to drive faster than I think they should have.
Exactly, I think, but it's the Liberals who say no, because it wouldn't be fair to tell other people what they should be doing.
There was just a big controversy here in Toronto where we lowered the speeds on main streets from 50 to 40 to 30 kilometers an hour because they found that difference of even 20 kilometers an hour can save lives when people get hit by a car.
Exactly.
Okay, our time is up, but I have not given Joe Hayward Hayes. You're the only person who hasn't had a chance to speak. So you have about 1 minute if you have something you can say.
Big news here is the fact that we now have in Peterborough 350 pollinator gardens planted. And this is a huge, it's now becoming a staple, and people are really seeing through the absurdity of lawns and knowing that a beautiful pollinator garden can support our threatened creatures that are pollinating, like butterflies and bees and hummingbirds. I just saw a hummingbird before this show started. So that's the good news, that people coming together in community can begin to make a difference.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Well, I have 3 minutes after 4. So I usually try to let people go at 4. But since I was a bit late getting started because of technical glitches, if anybody has a wise thought to impart, I'll let you have a couple of minutes. Anybody have something urgent and important that we should share?
I do.
Happy birthday, Meta, and all love.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
No, not yet.
Yes, I'm going to be 92 on Tuesday.
bravo.
And the best is that Peace Magazine is now turning 40. 40 years old magazine, and we are turning some pages. We're going to have a new direction for the magazine to some extent. It's still online. We've stopped publishing it as a paper publication a couple of years ago, but there are advantages to having it online because you can send it easily to people all over the world. So we could have a worldwide publication, and I hope that it will become so. But we will be focusing largely on giving more space to talking about several different global issues, all of the ones that Project Save the World chooses as our mandate. That is war and weapons, global warming, famine, pandemics, radioactive contamination, and cyber risks. And then 3 sectors of society where we need help. That is the economy, governance and human rights, and civil society. So we will be having more articles by experts on these topics. And I hope that each story that we publish in the magazine, people, when you read about it and you want to have a conversation or you disagree with something that is said, you'll go to the website and use those pages to continue the conversation. So at the end of the show, I'm going to put up some links so you'll know where to go if you want to comment on either this conversation today or any of the future topics that we, as Peace Magazine and as Project Save the World, will continue to address. So we've done 40 years and we're starting our next 40-year period. And we wish us well, 40 more years to go. So thank you all. And it's wonderful to see Ingrid in particular. It's been about 5 years since I saw you, Ingrid. So come and see me another time.
Reality, yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. And I'll see you in a month, the last Sunday of every month. Okay.
Continue to keep well.
Indeed. You too. Bye.
Bye.
I hope you're watching this show from our website, tosavetheworld.ca. Assuming that you are, I can tell you how to post your own comments or to read the comments of others or even the chat box from this issue. Just watch the little box that I put above. Project Save the World produces these forums. This is episode 568. You can watch them or listen to them as audio podcasts on our website, tosavetheworld.ca. People share information there about 6 global issues. To find a particular talk show, enter its title or episode number in the search bar or the name of one of the guest speakers. Project Save the World also produces a quarterly online publication, Peace Magazine. You can subscribe for $20 Canadian per year. Just go to pressreader.com on your browser, and in the search bar, enter the word peace. You'll see buttons to click to subscribe.